So Sankirtan is like, it's really ecstatic. It can be very hard, it can be very difficult, and a lot of times, we really have to push ourselves off the mental platform. To some people it comes easier than others, but it's worth it, because Krishna will reward you with everything if you go out and do books. And I just remember that, in between people, one of the reasons why book distribution is so valuable is because it puts us in the urgent mood of begging Krishna or whoever we're praying to. If we're praying to Radharani, if we're praying to Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada, whoever we're praying to, of begging them, please send me someone sincere. Please Radharani, please Lord Chaitanya, send me somebody sincere. It's a good to be in that mood in between all the people. And then when it's slow out there, let's say you're not there during rush hour, you're there when it's pretty slow and the people might not be so, I don't know, you're in a place where there's not a million people, then it's always nice to learn shlokas in between distributing books. Have like a card with a shloka, and for me, I'd have to say a shloka like 100 times, but then I would have it down pat, And I learned lots and lots of shlokas that way. So, that's one humble suggestion, but always to pray like that, because that's like the essence. If we can pray like that, then Krishna will fulfill our spiritual desire. We want to get absorbed in the internal potency, in the Bhakti Shakti or the Parashakti, the internal potency of God. And that's like kind of like the key to Sankirtan. I wanted just to mention a couple stories about, I was living in Juhu Temple, which is Bombay, which now they call Mumbai, but I was living there for 5 years, from 1990 to 95, and at that time, Sumati Morarji was still living. She lived there, a few blocks from the temple. Mr. P.L. Shetty, who, I don't know if anybody ever heard of him. He's the one that really helped the temple be there. If you know a little bit just about the gist of the story for Bombay Temple, Prabhupada really wanted that temple there. The man, Mr. Nair, was trying to cheat Prabhupada out of the deed to the land. He did so many things to cheat him. And then they even sent hooligans there to tear down the temporary temple, and they tore it down. And imagine, the deities, Radharasa Bihari, were standing there, and they tore down their temple from around them. And then this man came forward, Mr. P.L. Shetty, his construction engineer, was building things. So he said, look, the judge said that we have until Monday to do something. It's Sunday night, it's pouring rain. I'll get all the materials that we need, all this cement sheeting for the roofs, everything else that we need, and I'll bring in 40 workers, and we'll do it. So he got, and then the Gunda, means the hooligans, the chief of the demons came and said, no, you just try rebuilding this temple. We're going to come and tear it down again. And Mr. Shetty told them, he said, well, if you bring 150 men, because I have 200 bullets in my shotgun and my rifle. And him and his son sat there with a rifle and a shotgun for the whole night. In the pouring rain, they rebuilt, and in the morning the judge said, what is built, and no one can take it down. So then that was the start of, the temple. Later on, Mr. Nair, the demon, died, and his wife came crying to Prabhupada and said, please forgive all this, all the suffering we caused you for so many years. Here's the deed. And Prabhupada immediately called Mr. Shetty, and he came in the middle of it was about 11 o'clock at night or something. He came with his wife. They came with their pajamas on, to the temple. And Prabhupada said, now, this is Prabhupada's Sankirtan. Prabhupada said, now I would like to start collecting to build the temple. And Mr. Shetty looked at his wife. They had come, you know, in their night clothes. They had no money on them, but he saw that his wife had some gold bangles. So he just glanced at him, and the wife saw that he was glancing. She took them off and handed them to her husband, and her husband said, this is we would like to be the first to donate. And Prabhupada said, the temple donation starts with gold. Prabhupada was very happy and elated. First donation is gold. So this devotee, Mr. Shetty, I was living there and I got to interview him. I was doing a newsletter for the life members. So he told a couple really nice stories. These exhibit why Prabhupada, why he had so much faith in Prabhupada. So they were living in another part of Bombay called Goregaon, and then they built a house very near Juhu, near the temple, kind of, you know, not far from the temple. And before they moved in, Mr. Shetty got really, really sick, like the nerves in his neck became kind of tangled. So, in fact, he could hardly move, and he couldn't even lift up a cup of tea, he said. And it means he was just debilitated. And he went to a specialist, and the doctor told him, you need some type of operation, but unfortunately, the physicians to do that aren't even here in India. You're going to have an operation in London, you know. So he booked his flight to London and was ready to go. Then he heard Prabhupada has come back to Juhu. So he sent his son to find out where Prabhupada was. And they went there. And Prabhupada saw, you know, that Shetty had on, he had a neck brace on, he had a lumbar belt, and he was like, you know, looking very, very bad. And Prabhupada said to him, take off these belts. And immediately Mrs. Shetty started to cry, and the son, his name is Brij Mohan. Brij Mohan had tears in his eyes too, and he said, but Swamiji, it is against the medical advice. And Prabhupada said, take off these belts. It is not the doctors who heal you, it is Krishna. All he needs is proper, a proper massage on his neck, and he needs to take the Ayurvedic nervine tonic called Yogendra Ras. And Prabhupada told them the best place to get it in Bombay, where you could get the genuine Ayurvedic tonic. And so they did that, and he got, after 2 weeks, he was feeling better. And then a month later, he was like back to normal. So he was driving his car, and somehow he encountered the physician that had told him that he had to have the operation. So he ran into him, and the physician said to him, Shetty, is it you? I didn't even think you were with us anymore. How is this? And you're driving a car? And Mr. Shetty said, what you physicians cannot do, Swamiji can do. You know, he told me what to do, and Krishna healed me. So it just shows, you know, he had a lot of faith in Prabhupada. Another reason he had faith in Prabhupada, his father was living in Chandigarh, and he got word that his father was dying. His father was very ill, and he was dying. So he said, wow, I have to go there. And as Chandigarh was like approximately 1,000 miles from Bombay, so it would take if you took a coach that was driving all night and everything, it would take a little over 24 hours. So he was getting ready to go, and he saw Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, you may go to visit your father, but when you get there, you will find that he is not sick. He is fine. And Mr. Shetty was, oh my goodness, you know, he was like, you know, hard to believe, but he said, okay. So he went there, and when he got there, his father came to pick him up at the station. So his father was fine. So this is reasons why, why he had full faith in whatever Prabhupada told him. I have a friend in Alachua, and before she got her Diksha from Prabhupada, a lot of people would ask her, "What name are you going to get?" And she would kind of joke and say, "Probably Maya, because I'm always in Maya." I mean, she was being humble. She's not always in Maya, but she's being humble. So then, you know how when Prabhupada or when anybody, any initiating guru gives a name, they give the name. Your name is Govinda Das. Everybody goes Jai, right? It's always Jai. So Prabhupada gave her name. Your name is Mahamaya Devi. And there was no, you could have heard a pin drop. There was no, everybody was like stunned. And then Prabhupada continued. Prabhupada laughed actually. Prabhupada said, Mahamaya. Mahamaya, the illusory energy. So illusory energy is not bad. Just like there are phases of the moon. The illusory energy is another phase of Radharani. Those who do not want to serve Krishna, for them, the illusory energy is there. And I have another friend who lives in Alachua, and she was a native-born Hawaiian. Her name is Mahavishnu Priya. And when Prabhupada was in Hawaii one time, he was sitting in the back, she was sitting in the back of the temple, which was probably another at least half as long as this temple room. So kind of far back there and wider too, pretty big, and it was packed full of devotees. And so Prabhupada was giving the lecture, and she was crying because tears of happy joy and ecstasy, because she's thinking, oh, I can't believe that I'm here and Prabhupada is here and I get to be in his presence. So she was crying. And so Prabhupada from the front of the room looked at her and said, these tears are putting out the fire of material existence. And tears of joy. The devotees were at the Pacific Ocean in California. They built a fire. Prabhupada was with them. And they were chanting kirtan. They were dancing around the fire, actually. Prabhupada held up his arms. He looked at the ocean, and he said 3 times, all glories to the Pacific Ocean. All glories to the Pacific Ocean. All glories to the Pacific Ocean. And Prabhupada said one time, when the ocean waves ebb and break, you know how the waves come in and they make that noise? He said this sound of the waves retreating is the sound of the gopis sighing for Krishna. And then in a letter to Sudama in 1969, Prabhupada said, the ocean is the father-in-law of Lord Vishnu. Why would that be? Can anybody venture? The ocean is the father-in-law of Lord Vishnu. Why? Because the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, the wife of Lord Vishnu, was born during the churning of the ocean. So she's considered the daughter of the ocean. So the ocean is the father-in-law of Lord Vishnu. This is really sweet. There was a newspaper like 40 years ago that was out a lot. It was called, and it was in London too. It was called the International Times. And it was, widely distributed, thousands of copies every day, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands. So one day, this newspaper had the headlines. It had It had a photo of the devotees chanting with an article about the power of the Maha Mantra, and this was the headline: "Beautiful blue smiling cowherd boy steals their hearts." Is that nice? So how the very first Bhagavad Gita got published. Prabhupada had given the manuscript to the devotees a couple years before, or at least months and months, and they sent it so many places and nobody would publish it. It's too long, it's too complicated, we don't want the Sanskrit, whatever, who knows what reason. But nobody would publish it. So the devotees had this album out that they were selling of the Maha Mantra and songs, devotional songs, called the Happening Album. And they would put ads in the local newspapers. They had these hippie newspapers called the East Village Other and the Village Voice. So this is 40, 50 years ago. And they would say, you send in this coupon, give us your address, and we'll mail you the album and send us, a check for so many dollars, like that. So they were getting regularly mailing out, albums. So one day, Brahmananda noticed an address, and the address was in Manhattan, and it said Macmillan Publishers. They wanted an album. So he said, oh, look, Prabhupada, this person at Macmillan Publishers wants an album. And Prabhupada said, you do not mail. You go there in person. And you tell him, I am a disciple of a guru from India. And he has a Bhagavad Gita to publish. Okay, so Brahmananda went there. He had high hopes. And when he's looking at the building, and it's a big skyscraper in Manhattan. So he's thinking, wow, this is great. So he gets there, and he found out that the person that wanted the Bhagavad Gita was just kind of a low-level clerk in the business. Really, not a very important job or anything like that. So he was giving the man the book, but in walked an executive. His heart kind of crashed. Oh, it's just but in walked an executive, and the executive introduced Brahmananda to. The clerk introduced Brahmananda to the executive, and Brahmananda said, I am the disciple of a guru from India, and he has a Bhagavad Gita to publish. And the man said, what? We have been publishing our line of spiritual books, and the only book that we need is a Bhagavad Gita. You bring it in, and we will publish it, sight unseen. So the next day, Prabhupada went personally. Ramananda came back and told Prabhupada, and Prabhupada personally went, and they published the first of Prabhupada's. It was the first book of Prabhupada's that was not self-published, because Prabhupada had published some of his own Bhagavatams. But this was the first book that was published outside. I got this story from Mukunda Maharaj. If you know Mukunda Swami, very, very nice devotee, one of the very first devotees. And in 1967, imagine over 50 years ago, they started the temple in San Francisco. And at that time, in America, there was a poet called Allen Ginsberg, who you may have heard of, but in America at that time, he was kind of well known. So everybody knew who he was. So word had been going around, Allen Ginsberg has a guru, and like that. So somebody came up to Prabhupada and asked, are you Allen Ginsberg's guru? And Prabhupada's answer, just out of humility, I am nobody's guru. I am everybody's servant. Then in a very low voice, almost to himself, actually I'm not even a servant. A servant of God is no ordinary thing. Amazing, huh? Yeah, real humility. In 1970 in Calcutta, Achyutananda lives in Alachua now, by the way. He was a Swami for a while back then. He's not now, but he writes his stories about, he had a lot of association with Prabhupada. So Achyutananda he was one of the very first devotees to go to India with Prabhupada. And if you see that, our Vaishnava songbook, he was the one that compiled the first, you may see the original one, and he's got, things in it. He compiled it. So Achyutananda was debating with the gentleman about who is more important, Lord Chaitanya or Lord Sri Krishna. So they were having this debate. And Achyutananda was saying, Lord Chaitanya, you can imagine he's saying, Bhaja Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nayanya, and then the man is saying, Lord Krishna, Ishvara Parama Krishna, or whatever he was saying, they each have their arguments. And finally, Prabhupada came in the room, and they explained, and they presented the question to him. Who is more important, Lord Chaitanya or Lord Sri Krishna? And Prabhupada answered, Radha. Before Srila Prabhupada went to bed at night, he would pray. Before he went, took rest, he would pray. I pray to Krishna every night to please protect me from Maya. And in a Bhagavatam lecture once, Prabhupada said, my disciples flirt with Maya. Means instead of praying, please protect me, we flirt with Maya. I got this story from a godbrother at the manor, and Kishore Prabhu, Sri Kama's husband, okay? So Prabhupada was only in Scotland one time, and Kishore went with them, because Kishore is Scottish, he is Scottish, and so they were in Glasgow. It was 1972, and Prabhupada was only for 2 days in Scotland, one day in Edinburgh, and one day in Glasgow. So they were in Glasgow, they were in a rough area. There was a hall that they had rented, and it was a pretty rough area. So first they had a lecture, then a big kirtan after the lecture. And some young street kids had come in, and a whole bunch of them. Street kids, whatever age they are, they were young, so they must have been somewhere between like 10 and 14. And they were dressed, they had been out playing, so they were looking a little lackluster or whatever, and they got up on the stage with Prabhupada and the devotees and started to dance, So a couple of the devotees looked at each other, and they got up to get the kids off stage. They looked at each other, what's this, who they think they are. So they get up to start pulling the kids off the stage, and Prabhupada said, no, let them dance. They are devotees. Yeah. And at Berry Place in 1973, after Prabhupada gave the lecture, and he was getting, kind of walking out to leave, and of course the temple room was packed, So Yogeshwar was there, and Yogeshwar shouted out, Srila Prabhupada, you are Radharani's mercy personified. Everybody said, Jai! And Prabhupada said softly, and Yogeshwar was right next to him, so he was like the only one that heard it. Prabhupada said, Radharani's mercy contaminated. It means he's being very humble, again, you know. And when Prabhupada was towards the end, the last year that he would, in his manifest, presence here on the planet, 1977, Prabhupada was in precarious health. He was in London, and he told Abhiram Prabhu during a massage, "No matter what happens, my death must be glorious. No tubes or pipes." And the doctors said, "We don't know how this man is continuing to live and not screaming out in pain. It's impossible. Anybody else would be screaming, but Prabhupada did never." And one day he told Pradyumna, that Prabhupada told Pradyumna that he had a dream in which he saw the Vishnu Dutas coming to take him to the spiritual world. And they were fair-skinned and blue-eyed like his Western disciples. Amazing. So Prabhupada answered several times that people would ask him, what is humility? Several different answers, whatever his mood was. One time, the devotees asked, what is humility? And, we may think that humility means to be shy, meek, reticent, or whatever, like that, shy, submissive. But Prabhupada answered, humility is to act boldly for Krishna. What does that mean? So I thought, what in the world does that mean? I thought, oh, I know what it means. It means like when you're supposed to go on Sankirtan and you really don't want to do it, but you have to push yourself to go out and act boldly for Krishna. That's real humility. Because, some days, it's easy to go out there and, excuse me, sir, pass out the books and like that. But some days it's like you gotta really, push yourself off of that old mental platform. You don't feel like doing it, but you have to. It's your seva, it's your service, So then that's real humility, to act boldly for Krishna, even if you don't want to. Right? Oh. There's another time. Prabhupada always said the perfect thing and so humble. So in 1976, Prabhupada was in Chandigarh. He was in Chandigarh because that man we were talking about, Mr. P.L. Shetty, invited Prabhupada there. So they were having a pandal, and Prabhupada gave the lecture, and then someone stood up and asked this question. It's not really a question, it's kind of like a statement, but the man said, Sai Baba is the Lord himself. What is your opinion of this? So this is Prabhupada's answer. Prabhupada, we are rascals, so we do not know all these things. We know only that Krishna is the Lord. We are not very scholarly. We know only Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Only Krishna is the Lord, and the rest are all cheaters. In the mid-1970s in America, there was a court case in America because some people were saying that the Hare Krishna movement was attempting to brainwash the youth. When Srila Prabhupada heard this, he said, brainwash? No, it is heart wash. They say we are trying to brainwash. Actually, you have no brain. We are not brainwashing. We are giving you a good brain. That is our mission. The parents teach the children that illicit sex and drinking are all right. Then they say we are brainwashing. Wash, nay. The brain should be operated, surgical, to take out all rubbish things. It is all gobar, cow dung. Take out. I always heard, Trivikram Maharaj was living, or temple president of Orlando for a long time, in Florida, near us. So I heard this story from him. When the devotees were staying at John Lennon's estate at Tittenhurst Park, outside of England, outside of London, one time there was a darshan. So Prabhupada was sitting and looking at the devotees, and he picked out one devotee and said, "So, Ishan, are you remembering Krishna?" And the boy looked up and said, "Well, Srila Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "That is all right. You just remember me remembering Krishna." So then, a year or so ago, I saw like an elderly devotee had been there for a while visiting our temple, and I didn't know who he was. So I said, "Prabhu, what's your name?" He said, "My name is Ishan." I said, "Oh, are you kidding? Are you Prabhupada's Ishan?" I said, "You're the one that this story? I like this story, And I told him. He said, "Oh, Trivikram's telling a story about me. I'll tell you a story about Trivikram." So, Trivikram wasn't a sannyasi then, he was a brahmachari. And, but Ishan was married, his baby was born there he was the first baby born in the British Yatra. Ishan's baby, yeah. So anyway, they both used to massage Prabhupada on alternate days. One day, the other the next. And then one day, Trivikram came to Ishan and said, "Prabhu, I really feel like I'm getting in the proper mood to do this. And I'm thinking that I should do this every day, and you don't have to do it anymore." It's just like you have the most nectar seva in the whole universe, to massage Srila Prabhupada, and somebody's trying to usurp it, your nectar service from you. So Ishan was like, "What's this, So next time he massaged Prabhupada, he asked Prabhupada, he said, "Prabhupada, Trivikram was saying that I shouldn't massage you anymore. Only he should do it. Do you agree with him?" And Prabhupada didn't even look up. He was laying on his stomach. So he just took his hand and he just said, Prabhupada said, "Any fool can do." So then he knew that he didn't have to stop massaging Prabhupada. In April 1977, there was an interview with Mr. Koshi, the assistant editor of this magazine, The Current, in Juhu in Bombay. And there's a whole series of questions. You can look up this interview. And one of the questions, "There are millions like me who do not see how it is sinful to drink tea and coffee." That's his question, So what would Prabhupada answer? Prabhupada's answer, "Millions of zeros does not mean one. Zero is zero. If there are 7 million zeros added together, you cannot make one." So in other words, he prefers it that the devotees don't drink coffee or tea, anything with caffeine in it. You can drink the kind of tea, or there's the kind of coffee that doesn't have caffeine too, if you have to have it. Yamuna Devi, one of the devotees that started the British Yatra over 50 years ago now. So, in a letter, Srila Prabhupada, let me see, no, this was a question that she had. "Srila Prabhupada, how many times were you with your Guru Maharaj?" Prabhupada's answer, wonderful answer, "Since I met him, I have never been away from him, not even for a second." The perfect consciousness, right? And then in a letter, Srila Prabhupada wrote, "Please try always to remember me by my teachings, and we shall always be together. Just like I have written in the first publications of the Bhagavatam, the spiritual master lives forever by his divine instructions, and the disciple lives with him. Because I have always served my Guru Maharaj and followed his teachings, I am now never even separated from him. And then in another letter, Srila Prabhupada wrote, never think that I am absent from you. Physical presence is not essential. Presence by message or hearing is real touch. Lord Krishna is present by his message, which was delivered 5,000 years ago. We feel always the presence of our past acharyas simply by their immutable instructions. And then one time, a sannyasi disciple of a different guru, not in ISKCON, visited Yamuna Devi and said that Prabhupada had only given the ABCs of Krishna Bhakti. And he even added that unless she joined his guru's mission, no advancement would be made. So this was how Yamuna replied. He went to the wrong person, by the way. Yamuna's reply, when I feel as though I have understood 1/10,000th of a drop of the ocean of what Srila Prabhupada gave us, in however many lifetimes that takes me, then by his grace, he may give me more. Achyutananda, this was before he ever went to India, like 1968 or something. Where do you live in India? He asked Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, Vrindavan. What is it like? Prabhupada, oh, you can become more Krishna conscious in one day in Vrindavan than 10 years in America. There was another devotee way back then at the beginning of the movement, when starting New Vrindavan, especially named Hayagriva. He was a university professor, and he was kind of a character, kind of like a, So one day he announced in front of Prabhupada and all the devotees. He made a big announcement. What was his announcement? I'm going to renounce the world. So Prabhupada just looked at him and said, you do not own the world, so how can you renounce it? Everything belongs to Krishna, not us. Knowing that is renunciation. And then later Prabhupada said, you see, we do not renounce anything. Renouncing presupposes you own it, but we don't own anything. Krishna owns everything. Just as Krishna steals butter, he steals the hearts of the devotees. He can do this because they are already his. So he is not stealing or cheating. We are stealing or cheating when we enjoy separately from Krishna. There was you can even go on YouTube and see this. There was a blind Christian pastor in America and a gospel blues singer. He's a black man and very elderly, same age as Prabhupada. His name was Reverend Gary Davis. And they call him Blind Gary Davis. And he was born in the same year as Prabhupada, 1896, and he lived to 1972. And he had songs, if you go to YouTube, like Death Don't Have No Mercy, and different blues songs, So they asked, he asked Prabhupada, he's a Christian pastor, and he asked Prabhupada, what is it that we should ask from God? I mean, good question, right? So this is what the Reverend asked Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's answer, we should ask for his love. And someone asked Prabhupada, why do we have so many temples if God is everywhere? I mean, good question, Why do we have so many temples? God is everywhere. Why do you need a temple? And Srila Prabhupada's answer, air is everywhere, but we still need a fan to feel it. This is from the Conversations books. They have Conversations with Prabhupada. There's, I think, 35 or 36 volumes. I have them at home. And Prabhupada was talking about the Victoria Memorial, which at the time, it's in Calcutta still, but at the time it was one of the largest buildings in all of India, because it's very high, big dome like St. Paul's Cathedral, like that type of a building. And Prabhupada told the devotees, they were walking past it, and Prabhupada said, when it was being constructed, I went to the top by the scaffolding. I mean, imagine. And then the scaffolding in India was always just like bamboo put together with some green vines, It wasn't like in America they use like steel and wood, But in India it's just bamboo poles, So Prabhupada went to the top, and this is like way over 100 feet. So the devotee said, Prabhupada, you must have been very brave. And Prabhupada said, yes, I'm still brave. Otherwise, how could I come alone to preach Krishna consciousness? Some astrologer told that this boy, for executing his purpose, he will enter into fire. So right now it's a little past 5:30. Do I have time to tell one more story?
Yeah.
Or because I thought this was interesting because what this story kind of shows how John Lennon got the blessings from Krishna at the time of his death. I had read this, just the kind of the gist of it, a couple things in one, probably, I don't even know where, probably like on Dandavats.com or one of the websites. And I thought, but this isn't really telling the story very accurately or very completely. So I called the devotee. I went to, we have in Alachua, we have Pushkar lives there, he's the painter, and he knows everybody. So I said, Pushkar, where do these devotees live? Sarotama and Bakula. He said, they're still up in New York, and that's where this took place. So I called up the devotee, and I interviewed him, and I got all the details, because I said, geez, Prabhu, this story wasn't really told very nicely. So what happened was, on December 8th, 1980, I know most of you were in your previous incarnations, but this John Lennon had helped Prabhupada because before they got Berry Place, the devotees were like spread all over London. They didn't have a place to meet, and it was like terrible, So John Lennon said, well, why don't, and then they got Berry Place, but still they had to spend like months fixing it up before they could move in. So he said, why don't you just all come out to my place, and Shamasundar, you can do some work on my place, and that'll make me happy. And they gave Prabhupada a place to stay. They had like a temple room out there, and all the devotees, and they got fed every day for at least a month. I don't know how long, but at least a month. And that was like a big seva at the time, because it really helped. So, on December 8th, 1980, the New York Temple was on West 55th Street in Manhattan. And Bakula and Sarotam's daughter, Sringara, was born that day in the morning. By the evening, she had developed a cough, so they asked Kesiha, he's another devotee that lives in Alachua, to drive them to the emergency room at Roosevelt Hospital. So Roosevelt Hospital is West 59th Street, the temple's West 55th. And John Lennon was living in the Dakota Apartments, West 72nd. So they're all like, the hospital's in the middle. And at the hospital, they were taken, a lady doctor was examining the baby, and then she was called out. She said, oh, look, they used pagers back then, or whatever. And she said, oh, look, there's some big emergency, and I'll be back in a few minutes. So she left, and Sarotam Das went with her, to see what was happening. So Yoko Ono was walking alongside a stretcher, and John Lennon was lying face down on it. And when Sarotam and the doctor came out, devotees back then always dressed in their just temple clothes, because this was whatever, how many years ago was 80 years ago, 40 years ago, more than that, right? Almost. Yeah, something like that. And so they always dressed like that, just like in their dhoti kurta, you know. And when they came out, Yoko Ono herself said, "John, the Hare Krishnas are here." And then, I mean, shortly thereafter he expired, you know. So at least he got to hear like the holy name before he passed. And the New York Times was there, and they interviewed Sarotam and all the other people, you know. But I mean, I thought that it was very significant, because he had done seva, and at the end of his life, Krishna came, you know, to bless him, to give a blessing. So, thank you very much for putting up with me, listening to my stories, and I feel very honored to be here, by the way, in Wales. My goodness, such a wonderful temple and such nice devotees, and feel very blessed. So thank you very much, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gaura-Nitai, all glories to the Sankirtan, all glories to the Sankirtan devotees, all glories to your service. Book distribution, ki jai.
Do you have any more stories there? So we have some more. You got any more stories of Prabhupada there?
You want some stories of Prabhupada?
I have a few more if you got a few more.
Oh, well, let's see. I was with Prabhupada in Miami, because he came to Miami, and I made garlands for him, and he wore the garlands when he gave class. And I would go on Sankirtan, so I didn't get to see him too much then. Then we went to, I got a second initiation from Prabhupada in India, in Vrindavan, in 1976. And that year, by Krishna's mercy, Prabhupada was very healthy, and he gave the lecture every single day we were in India for almost 6 weeks, and every single day Prabhupada gave the lecture. And we were in many places with him. First we were in Mayapur for about 10 days, then we were in Calcutta for a few days, then we went to Delhi, and Prabhupada was with us the whole time, traveling with us. Then we went to Delhi and gave a pandal for 5 days, and we would distribute books, and then Prabhupada would speak, and they would show the Hare Krishna movie, and there were thousands of people coming to this pandal in Delhi for 5 days. And then and we went to some life members' home with Prabhupada, and then they said because whoever distributed books during that pandal got to go on traveling Sankirtan with Prabhupada. So there were about 21 of us in a bus, and we followed Prabhupada's car, and we went to towns in between Delhi and Agra, like that. First we went to Modi Nagar, and the whole town came out, the band came out, and all hundreds of people that lived in the town, they all came out. And so the town band was there with their uniforms on, and they were playing Hare Krishna, and Prabhupada came out and was kind of like conducting them. And we did program there. It means we stayed for 2 days there, doing the program. Again, Prabhupada would speak at night out in the pandal, and so we would be distributing books like that. And then we went to Aligarh, it's another town, in the same program, very nice. Then we all went to Vrindavan, and I got to clean Prabhupada's, everybody had certain area that they cleaned. Some people cleaned his bedroom, some his bathroom, I was cleaning his front room in Vrindavan. If you go in his quarters, the room where he would sit, and for some reason every day he left the previous day's garland there, so I got his garland every day, so I was like in ecstasy, you know. And then I was in the yajna there. That was a big yajna. If you see that book on Vrindavan, that's out, that Devi Shakti put together, and it was one of the biggest yajnas that Prabhupada ever was personally at. They had a lot of people in it. That yajna, let's see, Bhaktivedanta Swami got Brahman, Kaliyapani was there, and a lot of other devotees, and I got my second initiation there too. And then Prabhupada gave, you know, you had to go to get your Gayatri mantra from Prabhupada. So, and it took like 5 days before they called me, you know. So like for the first 5 days after the yajna, I didn't even know how to chant Gayatri because I didn't get it yet from Prabhupada, you know. So, we went in there. I had made, on Sankirtan, I had made a gift for Prabhupada. You know, I knew like several months before that I was going to India to get my second initiation. So I made him some shoes, the kind of shoes that will have a peg, and I made out of wood. And I made the peg shaped like a lotus flower and put a jewel in it, and it was gold leafed, and the edge of the shoe was gold leafed, and you know, sanded down the shoes like that, and I put them in a velvet bag, and I, you know, embroidered Prabhupada's name on the bag and like that. So I made a gift for him. So they sent in 5 of us ladies at once to Prabhupada's room to get the Gayatri mantra. And he showed us how to do it. And one of the ladies couldn't get it, so he told me to show her. And then everybody left, but I had this gift to give them. So I stayed in there, and I said, Srila Prabhupada, I made this for you. So he opened it up, and he looked at it, and he said, thank you very much. And then I brought him some flowers also, so I gave him some flowers. Luckily, I brought him, one of the flowers that I brought was hibiscus. You know what the hibiscus are? They're kind of big. Do you know what they are? And luckily, because later I read a story that one of the boys had brought him, one of the brahmacharis had brought him some hibiscus, and Prabhupada told the brahmachari, this you do not offer to the guru, because these are flowers that are offered to Lord Shiva. Because we were actually, us ladies were staying, some of us were staying at Prabhupada's friend's house who worshiped Lord Shiva and grew these flowers. So I picked some of the flowers from him to bring, you know. So Prabhupada told that brahmachari, this is not to be offered to the guru, but he didn't tell me that. But at that time, when that boy brought the flowers, he said, he was like crestfallen, and he said, well, what should I do with the flowers then, Prabhupada? So Prabhupada put one flower behind, you know, in front of each ear, like that. So he Prabhupada had these 2 big flowers. And he just smiled, you know. But for me, he just, you know, I brought him other kinds of flowers too, not just those. So I left him the flowers, and, you know. And then the next morning when I went in to clean, he had the shoes were up on the mantle, where if you go now, or at least for a while, they had small Krishna Balaram were there. So up on that mantle in Prabhupada's, you know, room, darshan room there. So, but the shoes were there. But I don't know where they are now, because I haven't seen them since. They have, Devi Shakti brought me back to, Prabhupada has a safe in the room next to his bedroom, a safe, and she said, I want you to see this. So she pulled out, and there were some shoes like that, but they weren't the ones I made. She said, are these your shoes? And I said, no, they're a little different, so I don't know what happened to the shoes I made for him. But basically, you know, the main association is by service. As Prabhupada said, you know, you don't have to have, you know, you don't have to have the physical association as much as hearing and doing service. That's the important thing. And anybody can associate with Prabhupada. It doesn't mean that, because you never saw his physical form, in person, it doesn't mean that you can't associate with him. You just have to read his books and follow his instructions, and you are directly associating with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, believe me. So, as much as anybody else. And nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can say that you aren't, So, that's a blessing of entering into the internal potency of God, that these things can happen. The Parashakti. It's a real blessing. And that's why Sankirtan is so wonderful. Because we get to directly get blessings from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and push on his Sankirtan movement. And it's so magnificent. It's just like beyond words. So thank you very much, and all glories to your service. Hare Krishna. Any other questions? If not, I guess we get to have a feast, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the class. I was, whenever I hear the senior devotees speak, and especially Srila Prabhupada's disciples, I always like that mood of that adventurous, courageous mood of, like you were saying, I went, we'd give a book in exchange for gas, or I thought I'd go to the airport, and I was wondering how, what would you say to encourage the future generations to have that same spirit of sacrifice to Prabhupada's mission and this?
Well, as long as you're, following the principles, chanting 16 rounds, reading the books, associating with devotees. And Prabhupada said, if you ever, don't get along with some devotee, then just go to Guru Puja together. And if you go to Guru Puja together, in the same Guru Puja, then you can't have any enmity in your heart like that. He said, then you'll get along. And to get that fired up mood, we just have to be fired up. Just like Prabhupada said, you may not feel like dancing, but if you just force yourself, get up and start dancing, all of a sudden you seem to be. Why? Because Krishna consciousness is, the fire, and when you stick the iron rod in the fire, it becomes fire. So if we want to get fired up, we have to just push ourselves and pray to Krishna and get in there and do it, and somehow we'll become absorbed in the internal potency. It's a question of begging and praying and doing and not giving up. If we can just be here, this is half of it, right? Just to be here in the temple. And then the other half is, Krishna's blessing on us and pushing forward, associating with the devotees, and continuing on, doing the best that you can. But by Krishna's mercy, I heard about your temple. I heard that you were some of the biggest in the world, right? In book distribution. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
At least the biggest in the UK or something like that?
Biggest in Wales anyway, yeah. No, we in the UK, don't we? But
That's, wow,
that's
that's astounding. I think that's wonderful, and I really commend you. And I'm sure that Prabhupada is pouring his blessings upon you for doing that. This is amazing. Totally amazing. So, all glories to your service. My goodness. I take the dust of your lotus feet for distributing the books like that, because You know, books are the basis. Purity is the force, and impurity forces them away. So we want to remain pure and do the needful. Utility as a principle means that we do the needful, whatever it takes to be able to get out there and distribute more books. You know? Yes, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Thanks for class. I was going to ask a question about, you gave an example, Prabhupada was saying about how the temple is like a fan, and so you can feel the air better, you know. So I was going to ask, have you got any advice how to, feel the fan when you're outside of the temple as well, and how to remain absorbed when you're outside as well, you know?
You mean not to fall into Maya?
Yeah.
Because you think that it's separate from the temple. I always look at, like for example, whenever I'm in London, I feel everything in London somehow belongs to Radhalandaneshwar. I mean, that's his name. He's the controller of London, you know, and that's the way I feel, the whole everything. So, you know, similarly, wherever you are, you know, you can feel that Gornitai, you know, they're like in charge. And just try to understand it, because actually it's the truth. You know, we may be in Maya, but the point is, then just get yourself out of Maya by, you know, as best you can, and surrender to Gornitai, because they're really in charge of the place, you know. And somehow we have to kind of change the whole mood and the whole energy from Mahamaya to the Yoga Maya, you know, so, or from the Apara Shakti to the Parashakti. We have to, you know, it's a little hard to do sometimes, but I mean, somehow or other, Krishna's helping us, and just see the, you know, the different strides that our movement has made in the past 50 years. You know, it started from nothing. So, and now we have how many millions of books are out there, you know. So it's, yeah.
I just want to say I like your answer to one of the devotees asking, what do you do if you don't feel like going out with book distribution? And you were using the example of just go and do it, because as you do it, you'll get this taste. And there's a wave amongst people seeking a little bit of truth amongst non-devotees. Laughter yoga, for example, I don't know if anyone heard about it, but they always say, oh, just make yourself laugh. You know, there's all these techniques to start it. It actually originated in India. But in the same way, when people start laughing, it's very healing, the endorphins are activated. So in that way, a lot of people will understand you have to just go and do it. So maybe when they're out distributing, you can use those kind of analogies and examples. And I just want to tell everybody a little story, because Nartaka taught me how to do distribution in Miami, book distribution at the airport. And somebody had been watching day after day, week after week, Nartaka giving books to some people and we give Maha sweets to others. So one person came up and said, well, look, I just want to know, why is he give books to some and sweets to others? She put a book in his hand, the Bhagavad Gita, and she said, well, for the intelligent we give books, and for the less intelligent we give the sweets. And then he gave it to me. Yeah, that was a good one. You don't remember that?
Did you have a question?
That's okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for your class, it was really wonderful, and coming here and seeing such an inspiring female in ISKCON, it's really wonderful, so thank you for coming. I did want to ask, if possible, how have you managed to stay so empowered as a female in ISKCON and in Sankirtan, especially the early days and now? Can you just reflect on that a little bit, Maria?
Well, I don't particularly think I'm empowered, but, well, I mean, I was distributing books personally, one-on-one, going out back then, but now I still do book distribution, but now I do Shastra Dhan, which means that I pay for the books and someone else distributes them. Because I work at a job, I have some income, so I give, part of my income so that they can buy books and then they distribute them. So that's the type of book distribution that pretty much anybody could do. If you don't want to go out yourself, you can still do that kind of book distribution. There's so many different, things that people can do. Yesterday we were in Swansea, and we were at the Harbor Tesco store, and I was lamenting like anything because I was sitting outside waiting for my friend, and I saw all these people go by, and I said, wow, these people are such good people. I really wish I didn't have a book on me. I was like, oh my gosh, what's the matter with me? I mean, why? I don't have any books on me. So many good people going by. I was thinking, wow, these people look great, I wish I had books. But, it's just, I keep them in my car at home. So if I need to, meet anybody, I can give them books. But, so anyway, there's different things that people can do, different ways of book distribution or doing any service. But thank you very much for your question. Yes.
What you just said about being in a car park outside a shop or something, what would you say to somebody if you just have a book in your car and you just pop to your car?
Yeah.
What would you then say to someone?
What would I say? What would I say to people? Yeah. I would just go out and say, hey, have you seen this? The point, what we used to do is always get it in their hand. Just say, excuse me, you can say any line you want. Are you from here or out of town? And then just look, have you seen this? We're passing out some books today, and just get it in their hand, and they're holding it, and they're saying, oh, and then you just say, this is a book on self-realization, inner awareness, how to get high naturally. I don't know what you want to say, love of God. You can say anything that's true, and it's a yoga, how to be peaceful inside without so much stress. And just, and we aren't selling these books, we're just taking donations, so please open your heart and help us with something, today. Help us in the endeavor. And people always help, so I'm, usually if they don't, if they don't, you go on to the next person. But yeah, get the book in their hand. It's like kind of, and I've been at the airport and it was rush hour, and a lot of people in Miami airport, and I heard a big whiz past my, big noise fly past my head, and somebody had thrown a book at me, and they missed my head because gosh, that could kill you, or it could really not do serious. And it turned out, I said, what is that? It was one of the workers at the ticket counter, and I went to his friend, because we used to distribute prasadam to them. Every week bring like plates of cookies, and then every day we had packaged peanut brittle and sweets that were offered. Because if people see you collecting money, so a lot of times they'll get envious. Oh, these people, what are they collecting money? And they get envious. So we would make sure that they always had a lot of prasadam there. So I went up to his coworker who I knew, and I said, what is with this guy? He threw a book at me, a big book, a hard, thick book, and it, could have killed me. And he said, he's angry with God because he found out that he's got a cancer and he's going to die soon, So he was like an elderly guy. So, yeah, it's not always easy to distribute books. You got your setbacks sometimes, but on the other hand, Krishna really will bless you for doing this. At this stage in your life, you're brahmachari, so, do the best you can, because Krishna's going to bless you later in life too. Along with blessing now, but he'll give you what you need later in life because you really sacrificed at this stage in your life. Believe me, it's absolutely the truth. I've seen it myself many times.
Evil.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada suggested to Ishan Prabhu that he remembers Prabhupada remembering Krishna. So please can you tell us the story about him remembering Krishna?
Oh, so you want to know how Ishan remembered Krishna?
How Prabhupada remembered Krishna.
Oh, Prabhupada remembered. Well, Prabhupada always talks about Krishna. And Prabhupada would always remind us of Krishna, of Govinda, how beautiful he is. Prabhupada would say, see Radhalandanishwara, and he would say, he's a beautiful young boy. Prabhupada said, Radhalandanishwara is Krishna pretending to be a deity, So, he would always tell us different things about Krishna. So, just read Krishna book, I guess. And that's Prabhupada remembering Krishna. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. What would be some good advice for maintaining a career in book distribution?
Yeah, it's the topmost book distribution is ecstatic. The main thing, once the devotees asked Prabhupada, what is the topmost service that we can do, And they were thinking, especially the book distributors were thinking Prabhupada's going to say distributing my books is the topmost service, But they asked Prabhupada, what is the topmost service that you want us to do? That's how they worded it. And Prabhupada answered, I want you to become lovers of Krishna. That was what Prabhupada said. So, okay. So regarding your question, how can we, maintain our book distribution? We have to not just distribute the books, but we have to read the books and understand the books and learn more and more about Lord Krishna. Because to know him is to love him. He's very kind, and when he sees that we're trying to serve him, he's going to help us. And if we can love Krishna, then that means that he will bless us by absorbing us in his internal potency, the Bhakti Shakti. And if we can get absorbed in that, then that's the perfection of life. Bahunam janmanamante gyanavam mam prapajate vasudev sarvam iti sa mahatma sadurlabha. So, so basically, yes, learn how to love Krishna by reading the books, and then you'll be able to distribute them better, and at the same time love Krishna more, and grow in Krishna consciousness, become purified, so that actually you become like a touchstone, If you give somebody a book, they'll become excited to read it, and like that. That's like the perfection of life. And this is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan party. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing many stories about Cardiff's Sankirtan successes. Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
We have kirtan now.
Yeah, we're going to do some kirtan. So thank you for coming and sharing. nice, wonderful stories of Prabhupada and the Sankirtan, inspiring many devotees, helping us remember Prabhupada. So it was nice. And come back when we're next in the country, come and see us. Next time we come, we'll probably, hopefully, we'll be refurbishing so that the temple will be.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we got big plans, but anyway.